Hello and welcome to Write On, the podcast from Final Draft. This is the show where we talk about all things screenwriting. I'm your host, Phil Galasso. Today we have an interview with Felicia Pride, co-writer of the film Really Love.
You can't be just better. You got to be a unicorn.
Like you, huh?
I wasn't born a unicorn.
Isaiah, you're never here. And when you are here, you're not here. Daddy, this is Isaiah.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to put anyone first who will never do the same for you.
I finally got a chance to break through. I've been working towards this my entire life.
Sometimes people are only in our lives for a season. No one can take it away from you.
Sometimes I feel like my work isn't enough.
What would be enough?
Not making any sort of statement, just showing black people it's normal and beautiful.
Did you feel like you can do that?
I don't know.
Final Draft's Sharday Sellers and Felicia discussed her experience writing on Grey's Anatomy and Queen Sugar, writing novels versus screenwriting, her work as an impact producer, and more. Check it out.
Welcome back, everyone. It is me, Sharday, and I'm here with a guest whom I've been following on Twitter for some years. She probably doesn't know, but now you know. Felicia Pride. Hi.
Hi, Sharday. Thank you so much for having me.
It's kind of crazy because I feel like I know you, although because I followed you for so long on Twitter. So I know the internet presence of you, but I'm really excited to learn the human presence of you today.
I'm excited to be here.
I want to first say, oh my gosh, Grey's Anatomy, Queen Sugar. You're also an author, a director. You wear so many hats. And it's something I rarely get to see for women of color, let alone Black women. So can you briefly give me an overview on which hat came first and how you fell into that and where we began this process of creativity?
Absolutely. I mean, my core is I'm a writer and, I went to school for business because it sounded like a way to get a job and I had a degree in marketing. And I was very quickly bored in my first marketing job. So I started writing on the side. And I remember the first piece that was ever published. It was a review. There was this community newspaper out of Staten Island. The publisher would basically publish our work. So it was a review of Mary J. Blige's No More Drama album. Actually, it'll be 20 years next year that piece was published. And I remember mind you, I was not a music critic, so I had no idea how to do music criticism, but I just knew Mary. I was like, I love Mary, know Mary. But when I saw that piece and got like the print version in my hand, I was like, oh, this is a wrap. Like I felt like I was part of a conversation that was bigger than myself. I felt very validated in many ways. So I started out as an entertainment journalist, a freelance entertainment journalist, writing about music, eventually added books to that list of things. And then I went back to school I went to Emerson for my master's in writing, literature, and publishing. My dream was to write the great American novel and to operate a small independent press until I learned how ridiculous the publishing business is in terms of like money and stuff like that. So I moved to New York, but I did work in book publishing and then found myself still with my writing itch. And I eventually, got an agent and wrote 6 books. One book was about hip hop called The Message. And I was also, I wrote 6 books, but then books became really hard for me. They took, I would like to say, like my life force out of me. They were really difficult. And I didn't realize it then, but they just weren't my form. And so I actually stopped writing for about 7 years, which was probably one of the biggest mistakes I've ever made in my life because it was so hard to come back to it. And during that time, I fell back on my marketing degree and became essentially what we call now an impact producer, helping social justice projects reach audiences. So I was working with documentary films, social justice radio and audio, and it was very gratifying work. But after a while, 7 years or so, I was getting that itch to return back to my writing self. I had also at the time was self-teaching screenwriting by reading a bunch of scripts, and any class that I saw, any workshop, and I was living in the DMV area at the time, I would go to it. And then I went to my mentor and she just suggested, why don't you move to the biggest market if you want to write because I was like, I want to write for the screen. I want to write and create content for the screen this time around. So 6 years ago, when I was 35, I moved to LA with one screenplay. That was the screenplay that became Really Love, which premiered on Netflix this August. So that was a 10-year.
Awesome.
Yeah, 10-year in the making project. And then I just really put my head down and got serious about writing for the screen, and then, transitioned into TV as well. And that's where I am today.
Wait, you blew past that last two sentences like that was no big deal. You came to LA at an age where, my Gen Z brothers would say, you're so old. And you had one script, and that script is now on Netflix. It's currently streaming, and it is a huge hit on Twitter, especially.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, maybe because you've been involved in the process for so long, so you're a little detached from it, but I'm freaking out for you. I think that is the best full circle moment anyone could ever ask for.
It's interesting. I will tell you, I did have like the manifestation of that full circle moment. So, the director of Really Love is Angel Christie Williams. We had a screening in Baltimore. We're both from Baltimore, like the weekend before it premiered on Netflix. And my family was there. My friends were there. And once the credits hit, because we hadn't seen the film, we hadn't screened it for an audience, the finished film, ever. Because we were supposed to go to South by Southwest 2020. That was canceled. Mm-hmm. We had a special screening at AFI, but that was virtual. So the minute those credits hit, I started bawling. Like, I was crying. My best friend was holding me. Like, it was wild, because I think just everything hit me. Like, you talk about that journey, that shit hit. Am I allowed to curse? I curse.
You can curse. I do all the time.
It hit me so hard. Everything, like the struggles, because it was such a struggle. It was a very difficult, arduous journey. But then also leaving Baltimore, coming back with a film, like it all hit me. So I felt it. I felt it that night.
Oh my gosh. And I want to know, out of that, looking back on it now, because obviously retrospect is the biggest wisdom gift we can get. What do you think was that one thing, that one decision, or maybe even pieces of decisions that you made that got you here? Like, was it talking to yourself, believing in yourself? Was it other people? Was it networking? Like, what were the pieces that you felt like contributed to your success that you did? Looking back on it now, maybe they were smaller or larger. I don't know.
It's interesting because people ask me that. And, often, especially as writers, we want to know, well, how many scripts? Like, they want it very practical. And my thing is, once I started doing self-work, working on my confidence, working on my value, working on my worth, identifying those things, valuing myself, falling in love with myself, that's when shit started to open up, to be honest. And, because when I first came to LA, I was not in my worth. I made decisions out of low worth, out of desperation, as we tend to do. But then once I started like really getting into me and also the authentic me, I started showing up into rooms differently, into meetings, into writers' rooms, into all the rooms differently. I started to value what I provide and bring to the table differently. And I think doors opened up in that way. So yeah, that's what I would say. That's what I honestly attribute. And then of course, just the commitment to craft and continuing to be a student of craft, continuing in two writers groups still. I take classes still, I think those two things combined is what I attribute my success to thus far.
And forgive me if this is too personal, but you do speak someone who's maybe been to therapy, or?
Oh, girl, yes. Okay. I mean, it's interesting because it was around 2017. I was in Writers on the Verge. My father got sick, and then not long after I wasn't in Writers. I was Writers on the Verge 2016. He got sick. 2017, he died. So he had died. I was in this toxic relationship. I started to see how nutty and exploitive the business could be. I was in some really just bad professional stuff. And that's when I really got serious about therapy and got serious about the grounding that I think you need in order to survive this business intact. And so I have many practices: therapy, meditation, yoga, hiking with my girl, who's also Roche Jeffrey, who's also a TV writer. We talk shit on our hikes and then sort of think about what we want to manifest. rest and do all that. But you have to have all the things to stay grounded and focused. And then I think my biggest thing is just I operate from a purpose. My purpose is to tell stories that center Black people, particularly Black women, and to make sure those stories get to the people they were intended for. So I operate from that purpose. I know that my purpose is bigger than this business. It's bigger than Hollywood. And that's what kind of keeps me pushing.
I love that. And I only pointed that out because as someone who's also in therapy, you can kind of hear it in someone's voice when they've done the work, especially the mental work. You're like, oh, they've been through the process.
They're still going through it. It's evolving. Yeah. There's still so many layers. I stay excited about uncovering the layers of me, and just going deeper and deeper with that.
That's deep. Yeah. Uncovering the layers of me. That should be your autobiography. I like that title. What do you think, especially coming out of Baltimore? I'm from Michigan originally. What do you think is the biggest misconception for people outside of LA who want to be in this industry?
Well, first, I think it's the misconception that this is a meritocracy. It is absolutely not.
Please expound.
Oh, nepotism. There's just tons and tons of mediocrity that's celebrated, that's promoted, that's advanced, that's positioned as the best. And that, if you just work hard, you can break through. No, it takes this sort of wild amalgamation of hard work, yes, commitment to craft, but even sometimes that isn't what breaks people through, right? There are a lot of people who are quote unquote broken through and don't have those things, but may have the right connections or thirsted after the right people. So that's a big misconception. But then also, I think the idea that Hollywood is the end all be all. I'm very interested in telling stories and delivering stories squarely outside of the system, as well as working within the system, right? There are ways to tell stories that you don't have to wait for permission. You don't have to wait for the green light. You don't have to wait for people to catch up to get it. So I think that's probably another one I would say.
In terms of people's journeys and how different they are, like yours kind of mirrors mine, where we didn't take the linear success path. Like we didn't do the assistant to staff writer kind of thing. What advice do you have for aspiring writers out there who may not have the opportunity to take that linear path? Like we just talked about, it's not a meritocracy. Sometimes it's about who your dad went to school with 20 years ago, who owes him a favor. So what advice do you have about people mitigating that kind of sporadic journey towards their goal?
Yeah, one, I would say, prioritize the work. Right. I can't speak for like how the others get in, right? Like how the people who know daddies, friends runs the room. I can't speak to that. But like, I will say that for me, it was prioritizing the work, making writing the most important thing, putting it on a pedestal, actually. I think that the work is from which everything derives, at least for me, the joy, the freedom, the creativity, all of that comes from the work. But I also think it is important to network, however you want to call it, however you want to dish it out. Like, I think it's really important. I realize that most of my opportunities have come from people I have built relationships with. I personally like the idea of more genuine relationships that you form and you don't know what can come out of it. You don't have any expectations for what could come out of it, but you're just building with people. So it is important to be networking. But then again, back to like the craft, to have the work. Like there's a lot of people who are like, I want to write. I don't know where to begin. I'm like, you begin by writing. Like it's hard for me to talk to people about that unless they're actually actively writing, right? So like getting the work together, getting the samples together, making them as strong as they possibly can be. All of those things are important. Getting in writers groups, taking classes, putting the work first. And I totally forgot what your question was, but.
No, that really helps because I actually asked that question for myself, not for anyone else. And I want to follow up that question with, I'll be turning 32 this year. And I always have like a word for the year for myself on my birthday, which is in October. And my word this year is discipline, because it's something I realize I don't have in terms of writing and doing the work. I procrastinate a lot because I'm fearful, obviously, of just doing the work because I don't think it'll be very good. So do you have any advice for us and about our lack of discipline? I know you do yoga and that's such a disciplined practice, just about listening to your own body and stopping. So if you have any gems, I would take them.
Yeah, it sounds like your thing isn't discipline, it's fear, right? You said you're
True.
fearful and you're scared that it won't be good. That's where I would start. I would interrogate that. Why do I feel that way? Why am I already putting labels on something that has not even been created? Why am I having these assumptions about the quality of my work? Those would be the questions I would start with. But then, it's for me, when I really got serious about wanting to make this a career, I was definitely very disciplined, and I still remain disciplined, because I'm on staff, but also, I'm working on my other things at the same time, right? So I write from 8:30 to 10 in the morning before work, unless I have meetings. And then after work, I write some more. And then I write on weekends, because for me, there's a lot. I'm always also trying to move projects through. One of my teachers, Kevin Townsley from Script Anatomy, had a system where he's actively developing project, actively writing a project, actively rewriting a project, actively pitching or polishing a project. And that's kind of how I look at things. So I start with the most high capacity requiring activity, which for me is writing. So I start with that in the morning. And then after work, if I'm in a room, then I go to the next capacity requiring activity. And then I structure my day that way. But I sit down and do the work. There are times definitely where I'm procrastinating, but I don't get writer's block anymore, because writer's block for me was just a manifestation of fear. I don't fear the page. I feel like the page is where everything that I want is on the other side of the page, including the story to be finished, right? So I don't fear the page. I may have story problems and I need to work out in my head, but to me, that's not writer's block. I think it's a perspective shift. I think it's a redefining your relationship with the work for me that helped with the discipline.
Oof, I love that. I actually think I will take a moment this week to analyze my fear about why I am so nervous every time before I start writing. Because then I start doing it and I go, this isn't so terrible. I don't know what you were complaining about. Or
some nerves, I think some of the hardest part about writing is starting and getting into flow. Because once you're in flow, it's fine. And nerves are natural. It's just about having a process that you work through those nerves to get to the writing part.
Yes. And I will be booking my session with you, Dr. Pride. So
Absolutely. Venmo me.
I want to ask one final question. We kind of touched on it, but a little bit, but I'm still going to ask it just in case I can frame it differently for your response. And it's, what advice would you give your younger writer self? And that could be either in the rooms that you've been in or way back when you were doing your journalism thing, just advice you would give the younger writer, Felicia, today.
Yeah, I would tell her, don't run from your gift. Like that's a bulk of my career. I've lived, feels like many lives and had quote unquote many careers. And thankfully they all now have helped me in some way in my current career. But the truth of the matter is that I was running from writing. I was running from my gift because I was scared to realize it. I was scared, of imposter syndrome. I was scared of failure. Didn't really have any frame of references for a working writer, what that looked like at the time. So that's what I would tell her.
Well, that sounds eerily similar to my situation. So that gives me hope that you can overcome it. I can overcome it too. I want to thank you so much for taking the time to come out and speak to me today just about writing. And these are my favorite kind of interviews because it's not so much about promotion. It's just about talking about the craft, especially with people that look like me, to pick their brains. So I really appreciate it. Really Love is currently streaming on Netflix. I can't wait to watch it myself, but people are talking about it on Twitter like crazy. So you follow the hashtag, everyone loves it on Twitter. Actually, one tweet in front of me is just like, I can't believe they ended it like this. So now I have to go watch the movie to see.
And the ending has been a point. It's been so interesting I've released work in the social media era, but this is on a different level. And it's just been interesting to be tagged in everybody's conversations about the movie. And I'm like, I don't say anything unless they ask me to chime in, but like, it's been quite an experience just seeing how people interpret and relate and don't connect. Like it's been amazing.
And you are also very active on the Clubhouse, I see. So I'm sure those rooms.
Well, that was my first Clubhouse, actually.
Oh, was it? Okay.
Yeah, it was my first Clubhouse. So yeah.
Did you like it?
I like it as a platform. I mean, it's hard for me to keep up with it, but I think it's great for those types of we were able to have, me, Angel, and then Yuta, our lead in the movie, on it. So it's amazing for that.
I love it. I think it's a great platform, like a live podcast show, so you can listen to the filmmakers talk about their film. It's something we've never been able to do before, right? Like,
absolutely.
Watch along the film with the filmmakers as well and have a discussion about it after it's done. Like, I think it's brilliant. But you look like such a pro looking at your profile picture. I thought you've been using it very actively.
Nope.
Hopefully you continue to stay on it, because what I love about following your page is that you're always offering position to answer questions or give advice. You're very generous with your time on social media.
Thanks to Felicia Pride, and as always to Sade Sellers for a great chat. You can stream Really Love on Netflix right now. And as always, thanks to you, our listeners. If you liked this episode, leave us a review, and if you haven't already, subscribe to the show on Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts. For news about new episodes and more, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter at Final Draft Inc., and on Instagram at Final Draft Screenwriting. This podcast was produced by Kayla Guess and co-produced by Emma Vranich. Editing is by Sean Bonnet. Music is by T. Kelly. Thanks again, everyone. Until next time, right on.